Welcome back, team. You're with me and Yazine. Today, we're talking about two of my favorite subjects, psychology and money. So we're going to chat about the psychology of money. This is a massive subject we see with loads and loads of guys. They can have all the strategy, they can have phenomenal mindsets, they can have loads of things going right in their life, but if they've not got their money beliefs in place, then things can really go wrong for them on the financial aspect. And Yazine has done we've done a lot of work around this, and he's had a lot of success in this particular area. So I'm going to delve into his brain. Yazine, welcome, mate.
Thank you.
Right, then let's dig in. What's the difference between wealth and the riches?
That's a good question. I think the best definition that I've heard, wealth is the money that you have left over, right? After paying off everything that you owe, right? So it's literally how much you're able to save at the end of a specific period. So I've made so much money, right? After paying off all of my expenses, right? I have X amount left, right? So that means at the end of the month, what I had before, at the beginning of the month, and what I have saved at the end has increased. That's a growth in wealth, right? With riches, I think too many of us for riches, we say, well, I've made $100,000 a month, right? I'm rich. Well, guess what? You're spending $110,000. At the end of the month, you're in arrears. You might be rich in terms of having made an income, but in terms of wealth accumulation, you're broke.
Yeah. And we're having this conversation this week, and it's like, say you wanna earn 200,000 a year or 250K a year. It's a big income. That sort of income is into the top 1% of income earners. But 200K a year minus all your taxes, then minus your living expenses, whatever that might be. So say your taxes, well, if you're ever in the UK, you're looking at 50% of that, and then minus your living expenses. Who knows? Let's just say that's 60K a year. You're not left with a lot of money.
Yeah, I think most of us think accountants are boring. It's probably true, but I think what the one thing that accounting gets right is what's the definition of success in accounting. So it's literally your assets is equal to your owner's equity minus your liabilities, right? And so too many of us don't see wealth as an asset. Because if you saw wealth as an asset, well then guess what? You'd manage it as an asset. And so it would be my owner's equity, the amount of revenue I've made, minus my liability, right? If it's in the plus, well, my asset has increased and grown, right? If it's reduced, I make an X amount of money, my owner's equity is 5,000, my liabilities are 15,000. Well, guess what? I have a huge reduction in my asset, and therefore I'm not wealthy. On paper, I might be rich because I go to the bank. What does the bank ask me? Well, the bank says, well, Pete, how much are you earning? How much do you earn? Well, I earn $200,000, £200,000 a year, right? That's what, $15,000, $16,000 pounds a month, right? Wow. Guess what? You pre-approve for liability, for a loan, right? For a mortgage, whatever. But guess what? What do you think's happening?
Well,
on paper, you're rich. The bank's saying, well, you're rich because you're earning X amount, right? But the amount of money you actually owe, right, after paying off your taxes, your mortgage, your grocery bill, your car, your spending, you're broke every month, right? And so you're not wealthy at all, right? And the worst part is that cumulatively, month after month, year after year, your assets are not growing. And we've talked about this. So we get so many entrepreneurs who say, well, I'd be happy making 200,000 a year. Well, guess what? Is that a lot of money? Maybe. But ask them the next question. How much of that money do you actually spend? Right? 50, 60%. So let's think about this. I'm earning 200,000 a year. That's what? Maybe 15,000 a month, right? I'm spending 60% of that. How much am I left with? Right? Multiplied by 12. So after a year, I've saved what? Maybe 200,000 right? In 20 years, all I've done is I've saved 2.43 million, right? So now I get to 59, 60. It's time for me to retire. Guess what? My wealth hasn't accumulated. I now have to, I now I'm going to spend the rest of my life, my non-working life, with literally 2 or 3 million in the bank. And honestly, today, that's nothing. In 20 years' time, we don't know what the cost of inflation will be, right? How do you survive on that? I think it comes back down to this. So Zig Ziglar, he was.
Yeah.
Right, so Zig Ziglar said that while money might not be the most important thing in life, right? It's right up there with oxygen, right? And I think he was very, very right, because ultimately, yes, you'll get people that will say, right, money doesn't make you happy. Well, guess what? Being broke makes you fucking upset.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think
it makes you depressed and
I think
anxious.
the people that say that I'm not here for the money. It's not about the money. Money doesn't make you happy. I think them just saying that deep down, for them, it is about the fucking money.
It is, and I think that's also because we all think, well, we've read a book. Maybe I read Think and Grow Rich. Maybe I've read The Millionaire Next Door. Right. So in theory, right, we know about money, right, but we don't really understand how to both make money and, even more importantly, how to save it, how to build on that money.
Yeah. I had this conversation with the guys in Awaken Man the other week. I was like, listen, man, let's just say that tomorrow I drop in your bank accounts, all your bank accounts, I'll drop you in 7 figures. I'll drop in over £1 million into your bank accounts. Have you got the character traits and the skill sets to be able to keep and to grow it? Or will you lose it? It's like the lottery phenomenon. Lots of people win the lottery. They win all these multi millions, and then years later they're back, or even worse, as to where they before they won the lottery, because they don't know how to manage the money, don't know how to keep the money, don't know how to grow the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the issue is that most of us, we're not taught from a young age how to pay attention and to be aware of our money habits. Right? Money, again, like everything else, is a habit, right? And so my belief, my emotions, my psychology, right, absolutely affects whether I'm earning money, whether I'm keeping it, whether I'm spending it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You see that? Because most of us, right, because we've never actually took the time down to sit down and reflect and say, well, what is my relationship with money? Because all of us do. In the same way that you have a relationship with your business partner, your spouse, your kids, we all have a relationship with money, right? And that relationship might be healthy and it might be toxic, right? Maybe because of something that happened to me as a kid, right? I saw my parents fighting about money all the time, right? So guess what? My relationship with money is based on fear and anxiety, right? Maybe there was never... So maybe growing up, you had no money. So every time you went to your father and said to him, Dad, can I get something? He said to you, no, we can't afford those luxuries. So now that you have money, so growing up, you said to yourself, well, you know what? One day when I'm an adult, you'll see, when I'm your age, your father's age, when I have money, I'll spend it. I'll buy myself all of the things that I want. So subconsciously, throughout your entire life growing up, you've had this thing, well, one day if I get money. So now today, as an adult, you're making money, and that old program is running in your head saying, well, you know what, I promised myself that I would not be like my father. I would not be broke. That I never say to myself, well, you can't afford this luxury. So now even though I can't afford the luxury, well, fuck that. I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to live in a nice house. I'm going to take a dream vacation, right? I'm going to drive a nice car. I'm going to spend.
Yeah, it's getting wealthy and staying wealthy both require different sets of behaviors.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you like you said earlier, you could make you make the 100,000 a month, but if you're spending 110, or you're spending 90, you're either in a bad position or you're not actually acquiring a lot of wealth. So they both require different behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, right, the way we behave towards money is absolutely influenced by our childhood relationship to money, and even more so, our parents' relationship to money. So, like I said, in my psychotherapy practice, right, I run a program on the psychology of money, right, and I had a client whose relationship was in distress. Her marriage was in distress, and why was it in distress? Well, because her partner she was a high earning lawyer, right? But her partner was growing increasingly distressed by her spending habits, right? That as soon as they made money, and both of them earn well, right? But if you look at the bank account, there was never money in the bank account. And if you looked at it, it was because as soon as the money came in, she spent it. And then going into a history, as a child, she had parents who were very frugal, right? And so the story she told herself was, well, when I'm successful, one day, right? Number one, her father was very frugal and stingy. So she said to herself, well, I'm going to marry a man, right? And I'll make sure that when I'm married, my husband is never stingy with money. I will spend as much as I want to. I'm not going to be like my mother. And so when she did get married, with her high income job, husband earning well, right? She said to herself, well, the shit stops here. I'm not going to have the same type of relationship like my parents. He can't tell me how to spend. I will spend, right? And so her husband's sitting there, now all the stress, because all the money's going, right? And you see that her previous relationship and her previous beliefs around money literally has now had a huge impact on what? Not only on her financial situation, but on her marriage. And you see it's cyclical, because now her little kids are seen in the same way that her parents argued about money, even though she said that growing up, she would not argue about money, right, with her spouse. Well, guess what? But she said to herself, well, I won't argue with money with my spouse because I will spend the money. But now that she's spending the money, she's still arguing with her spouse about it in front of the kids. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And so now guess what?
Her kids.
Her kids in 20 or 30 years are going to be in the same situation because they've been influenced by her toxic relationship to money.
What's the role of risk and luck in wealth creation?
Good question. So, Bill Gates. What do you know about Bill Gates?
Bill Gates he's a billionaire.
Okay, so most wealthy people, and I think we fail to understand this, that wealth, right, is often, so Morgan Housel, who wrote the book The Psychology of Money, actually talks about this, that luck, right, plays an increasingly huge influence, right, on whether we make money initially. So take Bill Gates, right? What do we know about Gates? Well, Bill Gates went to in the 1970s, right? There were over 300 million high school students across the world, right? 18 million of those were in the US, right? 350,000 were in the state of Seattle. 25,000 of those, 25,000 of the 350,000 in Seattle were 300 million high school students in the world globally, 18 million in the US, 350,000 in the state of Washington, 25,000 in Seattle, the city, right? Only 300 out of 300 million were in the school that Bill Gates went to, right? By a matter of luck. So this is the 1970s, right? The only people that had computers were NASA, the big banks, the American government. Computers back in the day literally were the size of an entire room, right? By luck. Out of all of the schools across the United States, 18 million people, right? Bill Gates School was lucky enough, because of their connections, to be the only school in an entire state that had access to a computer. And so Bill Gates talks about it. He says, well, guess what? If I did not go to that school, there is no way that he or Paul Allen would ever have had access to the computer. Because he was in that school, he had access to the computer, right? Because he had access to the computer, he taught himself how to program. Because he taught himself how to program, right? Again, so a couple of things. Number one, luck plays a huge role, right? But it's, again, what we do with it after
the
luck, right?
Yeah.
Two things. So Bill Gates says there were always three of them. So it was him, Paul Allen, Ellen and a friend of theirs. I can't remember his friend's name. I think Kenny. I think his friend's name was Kenny, right? Well, guess what? Have you ever heard of Kenny?
No.
Why haven't you heard of Kenny? So Bill says that even more smarter than him or Paul Allen was Kenny. He said everywhere they went, Kenny walked around, even as a 15-year-old with a briefcase, right? And all of three of them had this inspiration that one day they're going to own the largest corporation in the world, right? So what do we say? Bill gets access to a computer, 1 in a million, right? It literally was 1 in a million, right? Opportunity to have access to a computer, right? So around the time they were 18, Kenny was, unlike Paul Gates and Bill Allen, Kenny was an avid mountaineer. Guess what? Do you know how many people die on a mountain?
Yeah, a lot.
No, they don't. Out of 1 million mountaineers, maybe 5 or 6 will die.
Okay.
Right. Guess what? As an 18-year-old, Kenny went mountaineering and he died.
No.
Right. So a couple of things. So Bill Gates talks about this. His opportunity to have a computer, 1 in a million. Kenny, his best friend, dying.
Yeah.
1 in a million. Right. And because his friend, he says that, well, you know what? If luck had not intervened, Kenny might have been the face of Microsoft and not Bill or Paul Allen.
Yeah.
Do you see that? The incredible amount of luck. And so most wealthy people, whether it's Warren Buffett or Bezos or whatever, will tell you that we assume that their success came from the hard work, the habits. And yes, those things absolutely play a role, right? But it's also absolutely based on, well, do I get, so there's a couple of things. Someone, do I get lucky opportunities, right? Again, but so here's the thing: is that most of us are not aware. In any given month, we all of us get exposure to a lot of
Lucky opportunities.
Random opportunities. The problem is that most of us, right? What differentiates the wealthy from the unwealthy, right? Is that the wealthy take advantage of those opportunities, right? The unwealthy amongst us don't.
Yeah, and it's also having the balls to take the risks.
Yes.
Right, because Bill Gates and well, fuck it, let's do this. Let's have some bollocks about this and take some big risk.
I think most of us, we all say when we become entrepreneurs, well, why do you want to become an entrepreneur? Because I want to be wealthy, right? But are we willing? So now we've got an opportunity. Luck goes our way, right? I have an opportunity. What do I do? Well, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, so they were lucky in that they had access to their computer when no other student in the United States had access to it, right? So they taught themselves to program. But then what did they do? They had the guts and the courage to put themselves out there to approach IBM and say, we have a solution to offer you.
Yeah.
Right? As 18-year-olds, right? Or 19-year-olds, right? Think about us. We're 35, 40 years old. I want to become an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anyone anymore. I want to become wealthy. Then guess what? I get up in the morning. I know I need to prospect with clients. I know I need to reach out to people.
You do a post on Facebook.
Yes. And I hope, well...
I hope the owner of IBM will see that and approach me.
We are afraid of getting rejected. I'm single. In my head, I have a vision of a woman I want to date.
I hope she's going to approach me and she's going to like my post on Instagram and then I can talk to her.
But what do we do?
Yeah.
You'll see a hot woman out in the street. Will you approach her? Well, the fact that you passed her by, that is luck.
Yeah.
Because out of 1 million people,
yeah,
right? And maybe she smiles at you. Well, guess what? Are you willing to take the risk to go up to her and say hi? Are you willing to take the risk to go up? We're in Dubai, right? So, for example, there are a shit ton of wealthy people, wealthy leaders, people who work in corporate, have high corporate positions, are wealthy entrepreneurs.
Yeah, plenty of celebrities out here.
Well, guess what? You still need, if I go and sit at Jumeirah Beach or whatever and do fuck all, those people could be walking right in front of me. Yeah. But I'm lucky in the fact that I'm in a place that gives me the opportunity. I still need to take advantage of that luck.
Yeah, you still got to take the risk.
And go and speak to those people.
Yeah.
And too many of us are not willing to take the risk because we're afraid, well, what if they say no?
Yeah, so
what if the girl rejects me?
There's this like massive combination of luck being there and being aware of the luck, Then it's taking the risks, taking these bold moves, and it might be a micro bold move to say hello to the girl, or to give yourself an introduction to someone that's high level, which ultimately is a scary thing for a lot of people. But then after that, it's the hard work, and because it's like with Bill Gates, he sat indoors coding for all those days and weeks and months, and coding, learning all of that to then build what he did. So he put in a lot of hard work, doing the right thing, because you can put in hard work. You could be, and no offense to a mechanic, but a mechanic can put in a shitload of hard work. He can work harder than most people, but still not break through the wealth barriers.
Absolutely, but I think also how we started the Waking Man. Think about how lucky that was.
Yeah.
Right. If you look back, right, how did we think about this, right? I was on a flight somewhere, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. I went into the bookstore. I picked up a book, right? I bought the book. I went in the book, and at the end, the guy I went to go search for him. I went to search for the author. The author said, I found information about him online. It said, and this was 2016, join my Facebook group. Went on the Facebook group. Think about this, right? So it was a random, out of all of the books I could have picked up in the bookshop.
In an airport.
Right, in an airport, on a random flight, right, to Toronto, right? I picked up that one, right? Now guess what? So I've picked up that book, right? I've joined his community. On his community, right, he had a guy called Dan Meredith running his community for him, right? Dan decided to leave and start his own group. And so Dan had a friend, Justin Devonshire. So Dan and Justin invited me to become a member of Dan's Facebook group. Because I became a member of the Facebook group, I became friends with Justin, right? Justin then invited me to come give a talk to his clients in Cyprus. But the luck was picking up that book. When he invited me to Cyprus, I could have said, no, I'm an introvert. You know what? I actually thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I don't need to go through this. Because Justin was like, why don't you give a 3 or 4 hour talk on wealth and business building to my clients? And at first I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm a hermit. I don't need this. I'd rather prefer to sit at home, right? And I did, right? Coming back, what happened? I wrote a post on Facebook saying I'm going to be stuck at Gatwick for a couple of hours. Does anyone want to meet up? And by luck, who saw the post?
A legend.
Apparently so. Is it David Beckham?
Yeah.
You saw the post, right? And we met up.
And I messaged. I took that was luck. And from my part, risk, message, let's do this. And and at the time, I remember I had to move a couple of mountains to get to that meeting. Because it was early in the morning. I had to get a damn early train. I had to change my meetings that I had at my work. I had to move some things to get to it. There was risk and there was work to do.
But do you see that? It all started from a random opportunity, right? But it was what happened after those random things, right? That because you came for the meeting, we met up. Then after a while, you stalked me a couple of months. And you were like, would you want to mentor me? And I was like, no, fuck off. And then I finally gave
you pretty much did tell me no, fuck off.
No, but think about this, right? Then I said yes to you. Then me and Hina were doing a retreat in Toronto. I said, why don't you come for it? Right? You came. And again, think about this luck, right? Out of all of the books that Hina could have given people, she gave them a book where we opened the page in the book and a word leaped out to us. But you see how random that is, right?
Yeah.
If it had been a completely different book, right, we wouldn't have had that effect. We opened the book, we saw the word, and we were like, well, you know what? That's a fucking awesome word, right? Why don't we start a business
and call it that word? Yeah.
Call it that, right? Quantum leaps, right? And do you see? That evolved into quantum leaps, right? And then we did a couple of retreats. Then COVID happened, right? But even, do you see that COVID, someone might have said it was unlucky, right? But for you, COVID ended up being a lucky opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because it made you see what was, even though you were doing 7 figures in your business, it made you see what was wrong with the business.
Yeah.
Right? But because you also had to make money on the sideline, we started with the Waken Man. And can you see that all of those lucky things,
Yeah.
they at the end of the day, we'd have to say we are right here right now because of the luck, right? Luck absolutely plays a huge role, but it's also what you do with those lucky opportunities.
Yeah,
and
and-
whether you're willing, again, with you, right? It was risky for you to say, well, you know what? The 7-figure business that I have, the business that's provided a house for me, awesome clients, the Rolex watch, the Mercedes, right? Am I willing to take the risk to burn it to the ground and walk away,
Yeah.
right? You could have stayed there. You know what? The economy has picked up. People are spending money again. People are billing. Well, maybe, you know what? Now you could have doing 5 million, 6 million a year.
Yeah.
But you were willing to take that risk to walk away. And so I think most people, when it comes to wealth, right, are not willing to. Number one, they don't, because no one has taught us how to recognize those opportunities, right? Then we get caught up in our own stories about why we shouldn't take those opportunities because the opportunity might seem a bit risky to me, right? And so we end up even worse off and further off, right, from where we were.
But also with taking a risk, your water's on the floor. With taking a risk, there's other things involved in this. It's sticking. It's like if you can see that there is a long-term good opportunity, it's fucking sticking with it, because you can. It's very easy to be what's this, like the squirrel or the
Yeah.
magpie with a shiny object. It's jump from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and actually not stick to something for the long term. And also, I spoke about this yesterday. Like actually having the speed of action. You could absolutely take 10 years or 20 years to build the thing if you take your time with it, or if you go, do you know what? You know, rather than me reaching out to 100 CEOs in 100 days, I'm going to reach out to 100 CEOs in 10 days. You can speed up everything. And so there's the risk, and then there's the behaviors, and then there's sticking to something long term. But there's also what speed can you put into that to accelerate the growth?
Yeah. Again, with Awakened Men, right? When Ben approached me, right, it was January 2021. He said, "Let's do a program together," right? And in Ben's head, it was, "Okay, we'll do this in 6 or 7 months' time." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, awesome, great. See if you can get 10 people to join us, and we'll start in a month's time."
Yeah.
Right. And he was like, and I'm like, "Well, we're going to do it, right? It's like everything else. It's like software engineering and engineering. You launch it in beta, right? It's iterate, right? We're going to start something. If it works, great, awesome, right? If it doesn't, well, it's feedback, it's data, right? And I think the reason is that too many of us, right? We have this idea. It's ready, fire, aim, right? And then we guess what? We get stuck on the ready, right? Until I'm not going to fire and aim until. Well, I guess the most successful people, the wealthiest people do this. They aren't ready. It's aim, fire,
Yeah.
aim, fire, aim, fire. So I aim, I fire. I hit. I'm a mile off the target. Awesome. Guess what? It's data, right? I collect the data. I rejig. I aim again. I fire. Still off target. I collect the data, and on, right? And then, well, guess what? Down the line, I'm finally ready, right? So it's a process of it's aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, right? Or in some of them even, it's literally fire and then aim. So I fire first. Well, I see where the bullet is hit. Then I aim. Then I fire, right? And then maybe a couple of months. Look at a lot of software that we use, right? After years and years, this thing is still in beta. It's still not even ready for full release.
Yeah.
Right? And I think most of us, right? And maybe a reason why some of the wealthiest people in the world are software engineers and engineers, right? Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Bezos, Bill Gates, Tim Cook, Jobs, is because they bring this engineering and computer science approach to running their lives in their business, right?
Yeah.
It's all, you are constantly in alpha or beta mode,
Yeah.
right?
And
You are
also-
never ever ready for anything.
With all those guys, they've all been around for fucking ages.
Yeah.
We've heard that their names have been around for a long time. It is the influence of time.
Yeah,
It's that
absolutely.
they've been in the game. They haven't quit the game. They kept going, iteration, release things in beta, test, and then it's a compound effect. And you know, they probably fucked up 100 times, 1,000 times during that period, but then they're able to build up that much quicker because they've learned and they built all the character traits.
Yeah, it's true. We get so many guys coming to us and say, well, you guys are doing well in the Awakened Man. I want to be a men's coach, right? And then 2 months later, well, what are you doing? I'm no longer a men's coach.
Yeah.
Why aren't you a men's coach? Well, because it didn't work, right? And I say to them, well, guys, I started the Awakened Man group in 2017, right? It's what, 6 years now, right? Are you willing, right, to put in that process and do the fucking work? Like people would come to my father and say to him, right, I want to do A, B, and C business, right? Do you think it's going to be successful? And my father would say, well, yeah, it'll be successful if you're willing to do the same thing over and over for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? And only be willing to get the reward at the end of those 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Most people, everyone says, like today, it's a big thing to be a men's coach. Do you see how many people will start posting? Because they look at us and say, well, those guys are doing well, let me become a men's coach.
Yeah. Do you know
right?
what? I noticed this. I've had a few people recently. Good to see you guys still doing this. Someone actually wrote in our group. Good to see you guys are still doing this, still doing the good work and helping all these guys. And I think that is because they see so many people start things for a couple of months and then they're on to the next thing. They're on to the crypto thing, or they're on to the next cool thing that's come into the world. And it's sticking, and it's sticking to the one thing and really going at it for time.
Yeah, it's the same. Like we're going to the event tonight, right? But I mean, the guys whose event we're going to, how long have they been doing this for?
Years, a long time.
Right? But the people that will be coming there think, well, if I come to this event, well, I'm going to take 5 ideas away from it, and then by tomorrow I'm going to be fucking successful, right? And we don't realize that to be successful in wealth, right, and money, right, it has to be a long-term game. Again, I think most people don't get this. That literally, right? Wealth creation is a game. It is literally the best game you'll ever play. But guess what? Like any game, like a game, like the Premier League, it's not won on the first day, right? Or the second day. It's won after what? 9, 10 months, right? And so most of us don't realize that you have to play the game and over a long period of time.
What's the role of ego in financial decisions, or the role of ego, where ego can fuck you up in financial decisions?
Ryan Holiday, what was his book?
I know he's wrote one about ego. I can't remember the name of it.
Ego is the enemy.
That's the one.
Right, and so there's a guy called Henry Cloud. So Henry Cloud's a psychologist whose main work is on boundaries, right? But anyway, his quote was something like, how we do everything in life, right, is literally, right, how it has everything to do with how we spend our money, right? And he further elaborated by saying that how we spend our money, right, has to do with what? How we see ourselves in the world, right? And so the thing about, and I've seen this with a lot of men, right? Successful men, right, who make a shit ton of money and then lose it, right? And the reason why this, right, is because their sense of self is skewed, right? Terry Hill, who's one of the world's leading relationship psychotherapists, talks about this idea that men have a problem with grandiosity. We have delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
Right? We somehow see ourselves more important and bigger than we actually are. Right? And so it comes down to money. Right? Money at the end of the day. Right? So like Henry Cloud said, that how we do everything in the world, right, literally comes down to how we earn and spend money. How I earn and spend money, right, is a reflection of how I think and how I act, right? But because if I have a bigger ego, if I allow my ego to get in the way of me making decisions, well, guess what? That literally influences how I make money, how I spend money, right? And especially if I have delusions of grandeur, right? I think to myself, again, Morgan Housel in his book, The Psychology of Money, he talks about this, right? He gives the example of someone, right, who made a shit ton of money. The guy was fucking incredibly wealthy, right, in the right place, right time, right? And so he says, he gives a story, right, of this guy and his friends. They go to a restaurant, right, and they're eating, right, and one of the friends, I think it was him, who knocks like an ornament down, right? And so the restaurant manager comes and says, you know what, that's going to be like, please be careful because that thing was 500, right? And so he says, well, the guy takes out a wad of money, like 5,000. He bangs it on the table and says, take this 5,000. Don't ever embarrass me again, right? Don't bullshit me. Don't waste my time. Tell me what 500. Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money I make, right? And then he says, well, guess 2 years later, right? It's all over the news. The guy has filed for bankruptcy, right? He's literally in the news begging the judge in his insolvency case, right? Not to take away his last house,
Yeah.
right? Do you see that? Again, he's ego, right? And so Morgan Housel talks about this, that his ego, right, got in the way of him making rational decisions around money.
Yeah. Well,
Because he was so arrogant about the fact that I have the money, I can spend it, right? No one can tell me what to do. Don't advise me, right? I'm impervious to market conditions, right? I'm impervious to the markets crashing. Well, then guess what?
we were talking about this earlier about the Japanese and
Yeah.
and their thought process around the energy of money and whether it's happy money or whether when you're spending it or what you're doing with it has a negative connotation. And like that man in that moment was negative. It was a fuck you.
Yeah, and so we talked about this on yesterday's call, right? When it comes to nice guy, right? So most of us, man, as nice guys, our behavior stems from our childhood. It's the same with money, and I said this before, right? How we brought up, right? Our relationship with our parents, whether we were abandoned or loved, right? Whether our parents feel abandoned by money, right? Or love money, right? He has a huge influence on our relationship. And so growing up emotionally, we all have what psychologists call attachment styles, right? So I can be anxious, I can be avoidant, right? Or I can be secure, right? And you see this, right? They're with us with money, right? That I go to a restaurant, and we talked about this yesterday, right? We've gone to the restaurant, and it was Dubai Mall, right? It was a high-end restaurant. So we looked at it, and you're looking at the menu and saying, "Holy fuck!" Now calculate in your head, right? Dividing. Okay, it was because the first thing you see it's in dirhams, right? Now you calculate it. Now you're calculating in your mind how many pounds is it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're thinking like, okay, is this cheap, expensive compared to the UK, right? But you see that already, right? Before you've even eaten the meal, you're in a state of constant anxiety.
Yeah.
And now you're calculating, well, okay, I'm spending so much, he's spending so much, he's spending so much. Then how much are we spending on the drinks? How much is this bill going to be, right? So now I'm anxious about it, right? Well, guess what? Now I'm eating, right? Where's my focus on? Is the focus on the eating and enjoying the moment with my friends and my business partner and my family, my spouse? Or am I anxious about, well, what did this cost me?
Yeah.
Do you see that, right? Some also, on the other hand, we absolutely avoidant. We literally close. Most men do this, right? We put up a wall, right? So, well, I can't afford going to the restaurant, but my wife wants to go out, but I'm avoiding to speak about the money, right? So anyway, we go to the restaurant, and she's like, "Can I order this?" Well, I don't want to have a conversation about it. So what do?
Order it.
Yeah, just order it.
Yeah, just do it, love.
Right, just do it, right? But then again, because I'm avoiding the hard conversation, the hard look at my life and my finances, right? Well, guess what? I do it once, twice, three, and so I haven't said to her that we can't afford it. So she thinks, well, you know what? Things are fine, right? So now, instead of saying, well, you know what? We can only go out once a month. We do it every week. Well, guess what? At the end of the month, I'm broke.
Yeah.
Then what do?
Yeah.
The next time we go out, I have to put it on my credit card. Before I know it, The average person in the US and the UK have, I think, up to 15,000 on average pounds of credit card debt. Yet, if you ask the average person in the US or the UK, would they have 400 pounds to be able to pay for an emergency? Guess what? You know what they tell you? No. And again, it does come to our ego, because my ego should be able to say to me, well, guess what? I can't afford this. I need to save.
Yeah, well, it's
Right.
it's being aware of avoiding financial pitfalls. It's where do you fuck up? You know, me and you were talking about this yesterday, like the mindset of frugality, but coinciding with the mindset of abundance. So it's like both at the same time. So it's like I'm not going to be stupid with my money, but I also know there's a lot of it.
Yeah. We have a friend, right? Fucking brilliant guy. Own a manufacturing business, right? He came into the manufacturing business. Why? Because he'd gone to an Ivy League university, been on Wall Street, fucking smart, probably the smartest person we know when it comes to money.
Yeah.
Right? Goes into the business. The owner of the business was a technician. He knew how to run the business. What did our buddy say? Well, you know what? I don't fucking need him. I'm smart, right? How difficult can manufacturing be? Because I know everything, and he was smart. I even remember there's there's a intelligence test that us as psychologists use, right? 3 questions, right? PhD postgraduates at Princeton, right, in MIT, only get 1 out of the 3 questions correct, right? Oh, buddy, I gave it to him within 5 minutes. He answered all 3, right? Fucking smart. Well, but guess what, right? His ego said to him, well, you know what? I'm the smart guy. I have the MBA. I know all about finance. I was on Wall Street. I worked for big companies, right? My fucking business partner, what the fuck does he know? He's an idiot. He's a shop boy. All he's done his entire life is worked on the floor, right? So guess what? His ego said to him, I don't need this guy. And even if I do need him in my business, we need to rearrange the equity split. Then guess what? In his mind, that business, and we've talked about it, right? That business could have double its revenue with the machinery they had. But what did he say? His ego said to him, well, no. I know from my MA classes we need to scale because everybody says scale, scale, and scale. My ego said, tell me to scale. So I need to go and buy another 4 million machine, right? Could they afford it? No, they couldn't. But what did the ego say? Well, you're not going to be successful until you have that 4 million machine. Yet the reality said you could actually double or triple the business with the machinery you had,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So guess what? Do you see that? Because his ego got in the way of him making rational decisions,
Yeah.
right? And then when the shit hit the fan, COVID came along, the business dried up, the economy, Donald Trump became president. Trump said, well, we need to renegotiate the amount of wood products that Canadians are dumping to the US, right? Business fucking dried up.
Yeah.
And then where were you? And now your ego, because your ego was great when things were doing well. Well, guess what? When things will inevitably go wrong, right? The same ego that was great for you when things were right get in the way of you being able to actually face the truth of your reality. And the truth of the reality is, well, you know what? Things are shit. They're going to continue being shit. We can't operate the way we were, right? I can't change my perspective now because my ego won't allow me to. And so I can't pivot. I can't iterate. And we see this on Facebook. Everybody, a lot of gurus go on about this fact. Well, oh, look at everyone pivoting, right? But we know this from Silicon Valley that you have to. But why? Do you know why? Because I need to sell to coaches, right? And so I want to put myself differently. So I'll say, well, you know what? Everybody uses the word pivot and iterate. Well, I'm going to be anti that, right? Because my ego is saying to me, well, be a douche, right? Nobody's going to hire you unless you have your own concept, right? And so what do? We end up deceiving ourselves and we end up deceiving our clients about how they should react to shit financial situations. Like we know during COVID, right? How many coaches and whatever went broke? We did pretty well with the Waken Men because we made sure that the business pivoted, right?
Yeah, and we didn't. Just going back to your example there with our friend on the, the 4 million
Yeah.
spent on the machinery. I did this in my previous business. Didn't spend 4 million. I didn't have 4 million to spend. But this is another example of where my ego got in the way. We had like 5 new team members come and join our team really, really quickly. What do we need for all those team members? I needed new computers. They were architects, so I needed new iPads. And they needed the stylus pens to go with it, and they needed the keyboards. Guess what I did initially? I bought fucking new. I went into Apple and I bought brand new stuff. It cost me thousands, and it was all cash. And I remember going, fucking hell, that was like a big chunk of cash that just came out of our bank. And we were making 30%, 40% like on a good job. So for us to make £10,000, right? I've got that's a big chunk of revenue. It's a big chunk of contracts I've got to get into our business to get £10,000 in profit in cash for me to go and then spend that on our team members. It was an ego thing. I was like, yeah, don't worry, guys. You get all new stuff when you come and work with us. It was a fucking ego thing, and I learned after that. Next time we had new people come in, I didn't buy them new. I got them second hand because it was the same. It's the same freaking thing, but it was a fifth of the cost, and it still lasted the same amount of time. And it was a massive lesson for me where my ego was getting in the way and me spending unnecessarily in the business.
Yeah, I remember this, right? So when I left our family business, we were doing extremely well, right? And then I got the opportunity to lead HR for a multi-billion company in South Africa, right? ShopRite, right? And so this was literally the first time that I'd actually come into contact with concepts around like budgeting at that scale and looking at a P&L, right? And even though I worked in HR, the founder of the company, Whitey Basson, right, was a chartered accountant to begin with, right? So ShopRite, a $10-12 billion company, right? And I remember my boss saying to me, right, that at the monthly financial meeting, Whitey Basson, a billionaire, is going to ask you about your cost of your salary. What is it costing us to run the company? And I was like, but why? Right? And I remember Mr. Basson saying to me that he said, well, guess what? In any given company, the biggest cost, right, is what? The cost of your salary, right? And so he said, and so he said to me, guess what? He said, let me give you a lesson in life, right? He said, any donkey can make money. It's easy to make money. He said, but you know what is a sign of emotional intelligence? It's whether you can save the money. Because he's like, in our business, in retail, the money comes through the front door. Well, guess what? If you're not looking, right? Because retail, in grocery retail, profits are extremely low, right? It's a Walmart model, right? Stack them high, price it low, and just hope that you're going to sell a shit ton of it, right? It's extremely, extremely low operating profits, right? So guess what? He's like, well, guess what? The money can come in, right? But if you're not careful, that money will, before you know it, that money will be out the back door.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, what are we looking for in our business, right? We're looking for someone who's good at making money, but they even have to be better at saving it. And I think we don't realize this, right? And that was a big wake-up call for me that, well, you know what? Well, I look at the P&L, right? We were spending, again, it's retail, we were spending maybe between 5 and 10% of the division I was looking after was a $3 billion division, right? So our salary bill was something like $300 million every year, right? And before you know it, if you're not careful, because, well, guess what, right? I need to hire someone. Well, my competitors, Walmart, Woolworths, whatever, are offering the person twice or thrice, right? It's easy to say, well, you know what? Well, we did 3 billion this year, right? I mean, the overall company is 13 billion. I can afford to pay, meet the competitors. But guess what? When you have that attitude of not understanding of can we actually afford this, right? How will me spending that money actually impact the business long term? Because all of those things add up, right? And so I had to get really aware of the fact, right? And well, guess what? Because my previous childhood psychology, my own psychology around money, right, had a huge impact on how I was running a multi-billion-dollar business.
What do you think of the psychology around making big jumps to force an up level, right? So to force you out of your current paradigm and out of your current like comfort zone, doing big things, and it might be like hedonistic, big cars, big houses, different environments, just to force you into a different zone. What do you think of that?
What did Albert Einstein say? What was the greatest discovery in human history? Wasn't the theory of relativity, it wasn't gravity, it was literally, what did he say? He said compound interest, right? Is the greatest invention. Why? So, well, guess what, right? How can I can grow exponentially, right? But growing exponentially means what, right? It means me using up a shit ton of. So when I get up every day, we know this from neuroscience that we wake up with X amount of cognitive capacity, right? I only have X amount of I have X amount of willpower, I have X amount of cognitive capacity, right? And what we don't realize is that that capacity needs to be managed, right? Because if I use it all in the beginning of the day, well, what do I have left for the rest? When I take huge quantum leaps, and again, I think there's a couple of things. Gabriel Oettingen, who's a researcher who actually has studied the psychology of getting shit done. I think she's at Harvard or Stanford or Yale or wherever, right? But she says two things have to happen. Number one is we have to have big dreams, right? And then what do? We have to rub our dreams up against the real truth of our reality. So do you see what happens? So most of us, we have compound dreams. I mean, we have quantum leap dreams. We have huge fucking exponential dreams. We have those. I'm within a month. I'm going to 10x myself, 100x, whatever, right? And so what she says is, great, have those dreams, and then what do? Well, you need to rub that vision against the constraints of your. And this is extremely important, against the constraints of my reality. What does my reality say? So take that further, right? Well, compounding interest, right? So if on January 1st, I made a commitment to myself, right, that I would only improve 1% every day, right? At the end of 365 days, how much would I have improved?
It's 37,
well,
isn't it?
well, the math says most people don't know how to do math, which is why most entrepreneurs are broke, because most of us have never been taught how to calculate percentage. It's true. Actually, if you see most people, if you ask them how much profit they've made, they don't know how to do the calculation.
Yeah.
Right? But so people will say it's a 360% improvement. Guys, it's not. It is, if I improve every day 1%, right? At the end of the year, I would have improved 37x.
Yeah.
Right? And a couple of things. 37, everybody's read Grant Cardone's book, the 10x, right? I'm not telling you 10x, I'm not telling you 5x, it's a 37x improvement. Imagine, right? If you started this year, you had 100,000 in your bank account. If you 37x that amount, what would you have? You'd have 3.7 million, right? If you 37x your fitness, how fucking fit would you be? If you 37x your relationship, right? But again, right, you say that it's a quantum leap at the end, right? At the end, your result is a quantum leap. It's exponential. But day to day, you weren't taking quantum leaps. All you were doing was focused, right, and committed to increasing 1%. I was getting 1% better every day, and I've compounded it. I've increased my ability to make money by 1% today, 1% tomorrow, 1%. I think about this, right? If I'm not fit, right, and all I can do, right, is do 10 push-ups. And I say to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to every day make an effort to do one more push-up.
Yeah.
Only one, right? Well, guess at the end of the year,
Yeah.
how many push-ups are you be able to do?
Yeah. We're doing 375.
Yeah. Or stomach crunches or burpees or whatever, right? If I can only run, if I'm so unfit that all I could do was run 10 meters today, well, tomorrow, right? I ran 11 meters. The day after that, I ran 12, right? At the end of the year, I can do 5. It's compounded. I'm not going to only be able to do 3 or 5 kilometers. I'd probably be able to run half a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. This is absolutely a mindset to have with how much money you're earning.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's just say you're earning £1,000 a month right now. Rather than thinking, I want to get to £10,000 next month or £20,000 next month. How about it's just like £1,500 next month? It's like the £500, and then the next month after that, it's another 500. The next month after that, it's another 500 and another 500. Because in a year's time, it's not £1,500. It's not £1,000 a month anymore.
So it's interesting that you said 1,000 pounds, right? 1,000, right? So in financial psychology, we actually say to clients, so if you look at the average person in the US or the UK, if they had a $400, £400 expense, they can't save it. So we say, well, what is the first target, right? Again, because as kids, we were never taught how to save, right? So the first target is, I need, whatever I do, right? My first goal is to be able to save 1,000 pounds, right? As a backup to an emergency. So, and a couple of things that if you commit to yourself, right? And again, because let's be honest, I can guarantee you the majority of 98% of entrepreneurs on Facebook or whatever, on online world, do not have 1,000 to spend right now.
Yeah.
Or they show enough, love enough the credit cards or whatever. And so what would you do is say to yourself, my commitment is, right, I'm going to save 1,000 this month and 1,000 next month and 1,000 above. And well, guess what? And then all of a sudden it becomes a fucking game, right? Where I've now literally rewired my brain to see this as a game. It's a game I'm playing. The game I'm playing is, well, and you know what, we might say, well, you know, I'm earning a job. Well, I can't save that. Well, really, you can't? Because there's so many fucking opportunities out there, right? Do a side hustle, do a side business. If you're really committed to saving that money, you'll do whatever you can to make it. Like people that are entrepreneurs, right? They say they committed, but you don't see the results. Steve Chandler says, right? He says, well, show me your calendar, right? And I'll show you how committed you are to making money. Like in the same way, if someone is a lawyer, a dentist, a doctor, well, guess what? From 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, their fucking calendar is booked, right? As entrepreneurs, do we do that? Can we honestly say our calendar is booked for 8 hours a day? It isn't, because we haven't made this commitment, right? To do what needs to be done to make that 1,000.
Anything else you want to say in ending the podcast? I think like one of the biggest things one of my biggest takeaways and absolutely what I learned earlier on building a business is that my mindset around money played such a fucking important role, because if I didn't have the right mindset, I would do stupid things like my ego get in the way and I would spend the money. Or like if my beliefs weren't there, or I had these bad money behaviors from my childhood, then I would just reenact them in my business. So it's important I was fucking aware of that. So then I go, hang on a minute, I've got those childhood behaviors again. Well, I didn't have money when I was a child, so I'm spending it all now. Let's do something about it.
So psychologists actually call that money university. So as kids, do you know that as a kid you went to university? To money university.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? Well, it means that all of us as kids, we have 2 classrooms around money, right? Depending on, so there's 2 ways I can acquire habits around money. Verbally, I can learn verbally, or I can learn emotionally. So some of us, our parents, had a verbal relation to money. Either they argued in front of us violently all of the time, right? Or they shut about it because they don't want us to know what their distress over money was, right? the other way that you can learn about money is emotionally, right? And so most of us, we've attended either one of two classes around money, right? A verbal class where the conversations and the communications we learned around money were either good or bad. Or there was an emotional class, and in those emotions were either positive or negative. Does it make sense to you, right? And so as kids, all of us as kids graduated from a financial university, right? What we need to do today, right, is to re-go to school, right? And make sure that we committed ourselves to getting a positive PhD, right, in money psychology. Because for the majority of us, right, the school we went to, right, was a useless school, right? The lessons we were taught, right, didn't make sense for us. They actually, the verbal and emotional lessons that we learned around money, right, were toxic, they were shameful, they were full of violence, they were full of conflict, right? And there's been such a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? Like increase in our knowledge around neuroscience, right? And how the brain works, right? And about our emotions of money, right? That what we do need to do, right, is to make a commitment to learn, right? Again, not the bullshit that we see on podcasts and reading books or whatever, right? But about the real neuroscience of money and how our brains are wired and how to rewire our brains around money. Because again, like we said in the beginning, like Zig Ziglar said, right? Money might not be the most important thing in the world, but it absolutely is up there with oxygen.
And guys, I'm going to link in the notes of the podcast and in the notes on the YouTube channel a scorecard assessment which we've created. It's called the Money Mindset Scorecard. It will assess where you are at the moment, and it will give you some pointers and maybe some areas that you should focus on your money psychology. So give that a click, give it a go. It takes 2 minutes to fill out, and it'll give you some answers. Cheers, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.